everyone. It's Hilary Zalman. Welcome to Boca's Briefcase on this rainy Wednesday. We are so thankful to the Boca Raton Tribune, which creates this platform for us to speak with the community on issues that are relevant to you. Today we have a little bit of a fun and highly contested topic, South Florida associations. I was speaking to my colleague in England yesterday, and he was saying that he's not familiar with these associations which control what color paint you paint your house, or can you plant a flower, and he just doesn't understand this concept. And I said, not only is this a concept here in South Florida, but people spend thousands of dollars in attorney's fees fighting with their association, and the associations spend thousands of dollars of their community's money fighting homeowners. So it's a terrible, terrible thing that can happen, but it could also be a good thing. So we have a very special guest here with us today, which is Mr. Russsell Jacobs. He is a 23-year veteran in this area in real estate law. He's an entrepreneur. He's a business leader. He speaks publicly all the time, and he's dedicated his career to helping the community in real estate. And he has to deal with these kind of issues all the time. So welcome, Russ Jacobs, to the program. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. And you can say hi to my emotional support llama in the background.
Oh, yes. Why do you have an emotional support llama in the background?
This is something we do to advertise some of the silliness behind emotional support animals and some of the rules about it. This is the Save the Drama for Your Llama. And prior to January, you could be in a condominium association and you could have an emotional support llama, and you could bring him into the building, and the building would have to allow you to have your llama in your unit.
I did not know that. I've never heard that. I've been practicing over a decade. I've never heard about that, but that's why you're here, because you literally are the expert. And by the way, to our viewers, while you're watching, feel free to ask Mr. Jacobs any question. This is not legal advice. You always have to reach out to your attorney or to Mr. Jacobs after, but this is more of a discussion. And you brought up a great topic. We're going to start off with animals. During the 2020 legislative session, Governor DeSantis signed into law SB 1084, which provided even more protections if you have an emotional support animal. It also helped prevent fraud in housing. I encourage you to Google or look up SB 1084 so you can find out more information about yourself. But it did a number of things. Allows associations to prevent an animal if it poses a direct threat to someone. And it also brings up an issue about privacy. A lot of times people will say, why do you need an emotional support animal? Give us your exact psychological or issue. And do you have to really give over that information? One more thing I want to touch on is the difference between emotional support animals and service animals. A service dog is trained to support a specific function or job, and I believe is federally protected under the American Disabilities Act. The confusion comes in with an emotional support dog, which I believe is not necessarily a work animal, but provides comfort to a person. So there's a lot of topics to discuss in animals, and then we'll talk about other things as well. But Russ, do you want to touch on anything that I just addressed there?
I mean, that's like an explosion of things to talk about. Right. And there's so much misinformation around this topic. Everyone's really confused about it. So if I could, I would just offer a couple of quick pointers that can kind of ferret out all the bad information and kind of synthesize it down into some very, very basic stuff, which is the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, has a service animal. That's a dog, basically, who performs a function for somebody who is physically disabled. They need someone helping carry their mail. They're blind. They're deaf. The animal does something to kind of help them live their life and perform physically. Okay, that ADA rule, a service animal, is a special certification that the animal goes through and gets special certifications for that. And you see them with the vest sometimes. And that's everywhere all the time, no matter where you are. Service animals are allowed everywhere because they help someone with a physical disability. On the other hand, emotional support animals, or ESAs in the lingo, Those are animals that are helping somebody with a mental or psychological issue. Think the best example of where we see a lot of this is actually in post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, from veterans coming home from war. Dogs are a great sport. I'm a big dog fan, have a dog myself, a golden doodle named Scrappy. And I can see that there's tremendous amount of positive emotional support that you can get. And that may help a lot of vets and other people who have those issues cope with it.
Right. If you move into any of these communities, either association or for a landlord-tenant issue, can they say, hand over your medical records, we want to know why you need this dog?
Right. So you can't get to a specific about what the diagnosis is. You don't get to hear a long story about the psychological trauma they faced as a child because they couldn't go potty by the age of 3. Like, that's not something you're allowed to ask either federally or on a state level. What you can do, though, is verify that it's not fraud. And one of the major issues we had before this bill in Florida and everywhere else was that you could go online and for like $35, you could get a certificate that says it's an emotional support animal. There's no such thing as an emotional support animal certificate. There is no little vest they get to wear. If you want to dress your dog up in a vest, you're welcome to, but that's not how that goes. And ultimately, it only applies in housing and on airplanes. Housing and airplanes. If you walk into a restaurant, you have no specific license to have an ESA.
That's interesting.
So that's
associations constantly are trying to be, not to speak poorly of them, but are constantly trying to be nosy and get in more information, and they want to know about you, and you are protected to keep that information private. You have to show that it's real, but you have a privacy right. So definitely speak to an attorney before turning over all your medical records to your neighbors. You don't have to do that.
You shouldn't have to do that. Essentially, if you get a letter from a physician, from a psychiatrist, from someone who says you do have some issue, and most importantly, the animal, Charlie, Fred, Scrappy, whatever, serves a purpose of helping you alleviate that symptom, that should be enough. Online certificates, not good, not going to work. You had to have at least had one in-person treatment where someone saw you face to face. That's the new rules that help kind of ferret out the fraud.
Oh, and speaking of animal specialists, we had Jamie here. She had a technical difficulty, but I think she's just arrived. Jamie!
Hi, sorry about that.
Good. She is actually, this is Jamie Diaz, who's actually a professional animal trainer, and I'll let you introduce yourself. And thank you for joining in the program. We've just been talking about how in the past with emotional support animals, it used to be where you could just go online, get a certificate, and there wasn't training involved. So maybe you could tell us what you do, and regarding either, do you do training for emotional support or service dogs or service animals? Because we have a llama in the background too.
Yes, I saw that. I was listening when I was trying to figure out my tech. Diaz, I own Dynamite Dog Training. I have 2 training facilities, one in Delray Beach and one in Deerfield Beach. That we do all kinds of training, from everything from puppies to adult dogs to aggression, service dog, everything. And I heard what you were explaining before about the difference between emotional support and service dog and therapy dog. You know, they're all very different. So what I try to explain people when they call, a lot of people will call thinking they want a service dog when it's actually a therapy dog. You know, so like you were saying, service dog, I would train that dog to complete 3 tasks for the disability. So whatever the disability is, we perform, like a light switch, picking up keys, leaning on somebody, you know, that's a true service dog. Now, emotional support, that's like a whole nother thing, which I know that's why we're talking about. A lot of people, I mean, I feel like every dog is an emotional support dog for people, but it's a very different kind of thing when you really do need that emotional support animal. And if you do really need it, that animal really should be sufficiently trained in all aspects.
Does that have a specific training? Like, is there a specific training for an emotional support animal? I know a service dog, we're talking about specific tasks. It's a working dog. But an emotional support animal, I would think that there's not specific training of a task to perform, or am I wrong?
There's not specific tasks, but I mean, for me, if I have somebody that comes to me that has a doctor's letter from their doctor that this is a true emotional support, that dog really needs all kinds of forms of training. So we really like those dogs, what we call to be bulletproof dogs. So they should be good with all people, all dogs. They should be able to sit quietly in a carrier or wherever, if the person's flying. So I can't say it's specific tasks, but I've seen a lot of dogs that, although they may be emotional support, they're very dangerous to bring out in the public or on an airplane or something like that. So I think that's where the kind of discussion comes in, like what is truly an emotional support and which animals. I think there should be some kind of evaluation for them, that if they pass a certain test or canine good citizen test through the AKC or something, that then they can be allowed to go on airplanes and all these things. But I've heard horror stories about people bringing these animals, as emotional support that don't have the training.
Well, hopefully, like at the end in a few minutes, maybe you could introduce us to one of the pets. That would be really neat in the program.
Yes.
That would be awesome. I have another question I have for our attorney here. And by the way, anyone watching too, because I see here, hi, Brian J. We have some people that have both service dogs and emotional support animals. So if you guys have questions, feel free to write in the chat and we'll try to answer them. But Russell, so I want to switch back to associations for a second. Now we're in COVID, okay, which is something you haven't dealt with before as an attorney. And when I'm doing my own closings at the practice,
I'm dealing with it now.
Exactly. I've heard every excuse in the book that either associations, we're not going to do an interview, it's COVID, we're not going to allow anyone to buy or sell a home right now. Or here's one I heard today, we're not going to allow the annual meeting or a voter of elections or anything like that because it's COVID. We're just going to wait till it passes. Do you have any input on this? Because I do. Go ahead.
The other issue, I have a ton of input. I represent condominium associations, so I have a particular bend as it relates to that, try the fair administration of this. But what everybody has to understand is that we're under an emergency order. Okay, the governor has issued a state of emergency, and ultimately every county has now responded with that as well. And condominiums are in a position where they also need to address their community. And the key that everyone needs to understand is this is about safety, health, and welfare. And bottom line is that if you need to do things to administer your community more safely, make sure people stay healthy, then that is what you need to do. I have several associations with an entire community of elderly people who are at tremendous risk. So we have to weigh out the balance between the condominium and what's required and how we keep everybody safe. And there are ways to do it. I ran an entire election during COVID without a problem and without a hitch. And we did it, just kind of figuring out what we could do to maintain the rules of the condominium and still keep people safe. We had everyone spaced apart. We did not have an in-person. We had it on Zoom. People were able to watch through glass if they wanted to participate, and then do a Zoom call-in, so they were able to ask questions. And we had an independent panel who were there to count ballots in front of everybody, in front of the video cameras of owners. So they were all able to participate, masks on, 10 feet apart, and we were able to get an election done fully, fairly, and properly. So it is possible to do. You need an association willing to do it. And
can they just simply say no? Can associations say no? And we don't want movers coming in because they can bring COVID into our area. We just, how much? I mean, it seems like associations feel like they exercise this ultimate power.
Yeah, it's a different perspective. So from an owner's point of view, it feels like the Gestapo coming in and making all these orders. And on the condo side, they're just trying to keep everybody healthy and figure out what they do. Now, there's plenty of bad actors out there, but hopefully they have a good attorney who knows what they're doing. Bottom line is if it's for health, safety, and welfare, and you say, okay, we're going to run a rule, and that rule applies to everyone the same, then the rule generally is okay as long as it relates to health, safety, and welfare. So for a period, we were not allowing short-term rentals because that had a continuous flow of renters coming in and out from all over the place, which is obviously like COVID disaster. We required people to wear masks in common areas and hallways, which is part of the Palm Beach ordinance. It's part of the Broward ordinance, part of the Dade ordinance. Okay, so you have to wear masks when you're in the lobby. We try to do extra sanitation of the condo on a daily basis to try and limit it down. And you get into all sorts of questions. And what's happened is the federal level is not really acting. The state kind of gave basic guidelines. The county's giving other guidelines. And then a condo has its own rules. So you can be stricter than what the regulations are to kind of fit your community. So every association is doing something slightly differently to help make that work for them.
That's interesting. So we've heard the three magic words there. It sounds like you need to evaluate health. What was it?
Health, welfare, safety.
Health, welfare, and safety. So if you're listening and you're an association board, those are the things you should consider. Of course, speak with your counsel. And if those issues are not being, if they don't balance out, and obviously to also treat everyone the same. That's always been a general association issue. If you treat one owner differently, then you might have waived those rights. So what other things are coming across your firm right now with COVID and associations?
Well, one of the bigger issues we're facing now is, as we see rising numbers, is whether or not the association should report whether or not people are infected with COVID in the building. And every association handles that a little bit differently. There are certain liability aspects that an association has to recognize. The minute you start telling everybody that there's COVID, well, what are you doing about it? Did you start doing extra sanitation? Are you requiring them to stay in their unit? What if they leave their unit and they go out about? Is now the association liable because it knew and didn't do anything? Do you have to put a security guard for hours in front of somebody's door? So we're getting into a lot of those issues as to what the condo association do to protect its people without incurring a hell of a lot more liability in doing that. And so
I'll give you another one. I just read an article where they were talking about, now in certain communities like probably Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade that are even having more restrictions, if you are having a certain number of guests come in, that they actually are tracking them. So say they see that you have 10 or more guests coming in, they actually might be reporting these as a violation. So I'm sure that will come up as well. So there's just so many issues that are being here. And we've got a funny comment from Randy Gilbert that this is like Johnny Carson bringing on an animal. Thanks, Randy. But that's actually a great idea. Jamie, do you want to bring an animal on the show? I know we're talking about heavy issues, but this really is the main topic here is so that would be really fun.
Yes, of course. Can you hear me okay?
We're fine.
Okay. Somebody in the back. Okay.
So, a couple of weeks ago, we had a doctor appear on the show, actually from the hospital, an emergency doctor, and he actually reported right in the hospital, which is this is a little bit friendlier of a showcase for us. So while Jamie,
okay, do you want a puppy or a big dog?
Whatever you like. Puppies are fun.
So we have our day training program. It's where you drop off your dog for a half or full day of training. And so we have about 25 dogs here that we train at different times. So let me go and grab a puppy, and then I'll be right back to work with them. So
no problem.
See some fun stuff. Okay.
My kids. Yeah, my kids just called in, and they need some training. They want our dog to cuddle more, they said.
So Russell, so at the end of the day, we try to close out these legal things by pulling out the most valuable thing in your briefcase. If I want you to offer a piece of information you think both either to associations or to people living in associations, right now, what is your best advice to people dealing with arguments or these kind of fights?
Well, I'll tell you, certainly as it relates to COVID, and I know people are trying to politicize what to me is a straight health issue, and it doesn't need to be politicized. It's a straight health issue. If we can prevent COVID spread by wearing your mask, staying 6 feet apart from people, don't touch your face, wash your hands. Those 4 things. It seems really simple. We can all carry on our business and go about our lives the best way we can. And so they come up with a preventative measure. But wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, don't touch your face, wash your hands. Those 4 things. If everybody does that, we're out of this thing faster than anyone can think of. COVID will be gone. It'll be a distant memory. We'll all have COVID stories, and we can all move on with our lives. So we're all in this together. And I would tell you, everyone wants to, forward their own personal agendas. And I would just say to you, this is a time for us as Americans to be together on this. If we're all together and we work on this and we fight this together, then we can get out of this faster. We're going to get out of this faster together.
Are you running for office? Is this a platform?
I'm running for office.
I think we have a puppy coming on. And then Randy Gilbert has a question for you, but maybe we'll get that in. So what's the rule on association's ability to limit outside guests, service repairmen, contractors, and a behavior in a lobby or elevator? That's interesting because I know it's a little different with hotels.
It's actually a great question, and you're going to hate the lawyer answer, but it depends. It depends on which county you're in and what the rules are in that county or city, because they have specific rules that you have to follow. And then your condominium documents are also going to matter. What do the condominium allow the condominium? What do the condominium documents allow the condominium to do? In most cases, they're able to limit these types of behaviors and propose rules related to, again, health, safety, welfare. Because there's an emergency order in place, the general rules of a condominium are partially suspended. So there's certain things that don't have to be followed the way they would if we didn't have a state of emergency. And so during that time, as you can imagine, condos need to be able to regulate it for the safety and health of others. So in the lobby, absolutely, they can make reasonable requirements. Again, it has to apply to everybody equally, right? So that we don't have selective enforcement. But as long as applied fairly and it relates to safety and health and welfare, I think it's going to be very hard for a court to say that condo didn't have the authority during these periods. There was a Supreme Court case for Florida that just came out about a week or two ago, which kind of gave further credence to that the state does have the right to have emergency powers, and by and through that, the condominium has the right to follow those powers and enact guidelines to keep its residents safe.
Well, I definitely encourage people to contact Russ, and it's very hard. I mean, how can you speak so seriously when you have this puppy running around? You have a llama behind you and a puppy running below you, and you're talking about this is the best. So, Jamie, what's going on?
So this is Stella. Stella's here for day trading. So it's like her second day. So she's just learning the basics and running around. And, right now with COVID, it's really hard to properly socialize these dogs because you can't go anywhere. So at least this is a way that they can get proper socialization because it's really important. So that's what Stella's doing. And there's another puppy coming in, but we have a bunch of little puppies here that are doing the same thing. So it's a nice alternative for people right now to get that socialization and training in a safe way.
Are people concerned with then their animal interacting with another animal? Is that what you mean? Because they don't want germs to pass? This is a whole nother topic.
Not so much the dogs, but all the staff have their masks. We only do curbside. But for as far as puppies go, really 8 to 16 weeks is one of the most critical times for socialization. And when you can't bring your puppy anywhere, what are you supposed to do? So with our day training program, we've been able to do that, and owners pretty much feel safe. We go outside with gloves and masks, and I don't think there's too much evidence right now on dogs to dogs. Like, obviously it is possible if an owner has COVID and sneezes on their dog and somebody touches their dog and then puts it on their face, there's a possibility. But as far as like safety, we've been pretty lucky, and we're really cautious about it.
As an animal trainer, can you provide a certificate to someone with the completion of a service dog program that they could share, or that doesn't come from you?
No, I can provide Canine Good Citizen. So I'm an evaluator for them through the AKC, and most service dogs therapy, that's like the beginnings of a service dog that they have to have. I can provide them with the completion of something, but not as far as, oh, your dog is a service dog. What I do help them is teach them the tasks of whatever service that is. But we don't per se give a certificate saying, oh, you're a service dog. You got to do a lot of training to be a true service dog. And they do that with us, but we don't provide a certificate stating that.
Right. I had a case a few years ago, Russ, in Miami, with a dog they wanted to kick out. And just like Jamie was saying, the owner had to go through so many hurdles to get those certificates and training. And even when they got them, the association then they tried to go around a different way to remove the dog, saying the dog was dangerous. And it can be a really tough battle. Sometimes associations, if you get on the wrong side, and associations have their own feelings on this too. Maybe they don't want that type of dog in the community, but
yeah, so what ends up happening is that the bad apples spoil the bunch for everybody else.
Right.
Bottom line fact is that you don't have to do any of those efforts. You don't, the special training is fantastic. And, I would encourage anybody to get it. If you want your pet well trained, but at the end of the day, they need a letter from, an appropriate treating physician or someone who's an expert in that regard. And that's all they need. They shouldn't really need anything else in order to prove their case that they have it. They do not have to get into the details of their disability. The problem is that you have a ton of people who just want their pet. So they go online and they make up certificates and everything else. And maybe they just want to get out of the pet deposit. So they, put all this together just to avoid spending money, and they don't really need it. And so then the people who really do need it are treated negatively. And that's really an unfortunate shame, because there's many people who do need this, who should qualify and should have an emotional support animal, and they're unfortunately suffering because of the actions of others who selfishly just want their pet in a no pet building, or they want a 50-pound dog when there's only 25-pound dogs allowed.
And again, I encourage anyone who missed the beginning of the program to prevent these types of fraud. Please, again, Google or look up if you're dealing with these issues. The recent legislation passed, the SB 1084, passed by Governor DeSantis, because it's interesting on this issue. Jamie, is there anything? I know a lot of people are getting animals right now just to feel better during COVID. For the, people want to have something to make them feel better. Do you have any advice to anyone out there in the world of pets and animals and owners?
I mean, right now, I would say as much as you can, try and socialize them in a safe way. Also, what we're seeing a lot because of the COVID is separation anxiety issues with the puppies. They're so used to the parents being there 24/7. So I'm a big fan of crate training for your puppies. So I've been telling all my clients to at least have 2 separate sessions while you're home with your dog in the crate, with a bone or something to do, or a stuffed Kong, so that they have that separation from you. Because what we're seeing is a lot of these puppies coming in and they're like a nervous mess. So it's great that they have this comfort during COVID, but life eventually will get back to normal, and these puppies are really going to have a hard time being away from mom and dad.
Thank you. And Jamie, how can people reach you? What's the name of your company?
Dynamite Dog Training. So it's dynamitedogtraining.com. We have a ton of videos on Facebook and Instagram, and a lot of clients we get that way too. So if anybody wants to kind of see what we do, they can check out the Facebook, and all the information's there. And then again, we have the 2 training facilities in Delray and Deerfield Beach.
Thank you. And then it's funny you mentioned separation anxiety. A few weeks ago, we had experts on with stress and families and children, and the same topic was brought up. Children are now being home so much. They're talking about they're regressing, almost like, not to compare young children with puppies, but they're regressing. They almost don't want to leave the room from parents now. It's becoming like this bond. So that's very interesting, because I guess we're all animals. Russsell, how can people reach you?
Easiest probably call the office, 305-405-4444, 305-405-4444. You can ask for Carolina for faster assistance, and she'll get you a consult with me if you need one. And we're happy to help walk you through these situations.
Carolina Berlin, she's quite famous. I've worked with this firm for years. They are the best. So thank you. I bow down to you for so much good advice. It really protects people so they don't give away private information. Sometimes they just need minimal things to get these things done. If they want to go above and beyond, they can meet with someone like Jamie Diaz for that extra training, which is always good. But you all, thank you. And I just want to say to the viewers, because this runs all week, please feel free to reach out to Russ Jacobs and Jamie Diaz. They're here because they want to offer value to the communities. So people that miss this live, definitely reach out to them. That's why they're here today, to offer this information to help people during this time, because there's so much misinformation, like Russ Jacobs said, out there. It's absolutely wild. So thank you both. This has been a really fun, unique program.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next week, 2 p.m., we'll see you on Boca's Briefcase. We have some really fun programs coming up with a lot of people. I will advertise it when it comes up, but we've got some really special guests. So see you guys next week, 2 o'clock.